today's Global Learning Tuesday Times Roundtable. I'm excited to introduce today's moderator, Dr. Juan Carlos Espinosa. He is the Associate Dean and Fellow of FIU's Honors College. He's a political scientist with degrees from UM and FSU. His main research interests include the arts and political expression, culture and collective identity, and Cuban political culture. At the Honors College, he oversees curriculum, undergraduate research, media, and communications. Dr. Espinosa accompanied students on the inaugural trip of the new Honors College Study Abroad program to Vietnam and Cambodia, his experience with that being what inspired today's roundtable. And on a personal note, I just want to say what a fantastic individual JC is, and he's just a very interesting person to talk about higher education in the world and life with. And so I'm very excited he's our moderator for today.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. He's an alumnus, former student, so I'm glad that somehow I left a good impression. I'm going to walk around. Can you all hear me pretty well? Okay. All right. Let me preface by saying that I am not an expert on Southeast Asia, on Cambodia. My work has been on other parts of the world, but I have always been interested, though, as a layperson in that part of the world. Before I start, I want to show you I guess it's a promo for this program. It's no longer called that. It's the new Study Abroad program that I led along with an area expert who lives in Bangkok. We spent a month in Southeast Asia, a few days in Bangkok, Vietnam, and Cambodia. There's at least one student here who accompanied me on that trip, Skye Choi. So I may ask him to give some of his impressions as well. So I hope you'll be able to hear this okay. And for the camera in the back, I walk around a lot. So just so you know. Okay, Frank, I'll need to switch to the laptop.
You want to switch the PowerPoint now?
To laptop for them. Well, we should stop there because that's the China Study Abroad we have. Anyway, that was, of course, a shameless plug for our program. Not only honors college students are eligible, but non-honors college students actually accompanied us on this first trip. So, full screen. Okay. I'm going to talk maybe for about 20 minutes or so, and then I want to engage in conversation. I titled this discussion, My First Cambodia, and this is a picture of my first Cambodia. It's a postage stamp that features King Norodom Sihanouk. The article from the New York Times that you have in front of you is about the cremation and the services. It's about the death of King Sihanouk, King Father, as he was called in the years after his abdication, 2004. And the story of his life really tells you the story of Cambodia, of the ups and downs of Cambodia, the beauty and the horrors that that country has endured. All of it can be understood through his life. So with his death, with his cremation, with the interment of his remains into this beautiful golden stupa in Phnom Penh, the capital, it's the end of an era, literally, and there are open questions as to what the next Cambodia will be like without a figure that unified the entire country as Sihanouk. Now his son has been in power for some time, if you can call it power. It's more almost a symbolic figure at this point. It starts here, and because when I was a little boy, I used to collect stamps. And my father would take me to this philately store in Coral Gables once a month, and I could have $5 and buy all the stamps that I wanted. You'd go there and you'd look at these little glassine envelopes full of stamps, and they'd have the name of a country or the kind of stamp it was, lightly in pencil. And at that point, I learned about the world primarily through my stamp collection, and had this gigantic album full of stamps from all over the world, but I had nothing from Cambodia, had nothing from Vietnam, because at that point we were in the middle of the Vietnam War. But I found these old Cambodian stamps, and I was immediately interested, because very enigmatic figure there, his stare looking at you, and then the squiggly lines that in which the Khmer language was written. So I was fascinated immediately. So my first Cambodia had to do with this exotic place, a figure that I did not know, writing that I did not really, I could not figure out, which of course led me to looking for books and reading about this place I did not know. Little did I know, though, that Cambodia was on the edge of a terrible war in Vietnam that eventually would engulf it. So this is my first Cambodia, and this is my fourth Cambodia, if you will, because I go through different Cambodias as I try to learn about this place. And when Sihanouk was framed by a postage stamp here, he's literally framed his official picture with the black bunting. When we were in Cambodia, everywhere you went, there were pictures of Sihanouk, candles, flowers, people praying. At the end of television each night in Cambodia, you would hear the chanting of prayers for the King Father, and it would go for quite some time, and it was actually quite beautiful to listen to. So the frame of my first Cambodia and the frame of my last Cambodia comes together. As I'm sure all of you know, Cambodia is in Southeast Asia. It's a small country, sort of shaped like a, well, it's got a sort of a roundish shape. The capital is Phnom Penh, and one of the major cities where our group spent the most time in was in Siem Reap, which means the defeat of the Siamese, which I'm sure the Thais don't like to call it that. And in the middle is this wonderful lake called Tuol Sleng, and Tuol Sleng is where almost all of the protein comes from. The fish, crustaceans, everything. The Cambodian diet depends on this big lake. So when I started looking and trying to find out what Cambodia was, I also found this map. And then I started connecting it, and you see that Vietnam is right there. So Vietnam and Laos sort of grab it from the east, and Thailand from the north and the west squeeze it down, and then you see this area on the coast. When I started looking at pictures, though, this is a picture that I found that most impressed me. It's a temple called Angkor Wat. How many of you have heard about Angkor Wat? It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And when our group went to Cambodia, I went back 3 times. I spent actually the equivalent of 2.5 days with Skye's mother, Dana Choi, who accompanied us, and Xavier Cortada, an artist who also went on the trip. Although I must say that I eventually developed TFS, temple fatigue syndrome, because we went to so many wonderful, beautiful temples, but we went to a lot of them. So I must admit, I succumbed to TFS. And this is the past, the great past of Cambodia, the past of the Khmer Empire, 7th, 9th century. And then one of the things that I tried to learn about but didn't understand as a kid was all these dynasties, all these kingdoms, all these empires, all these names that had disappeared, except in books like this, but I couldn't quite figure out what they were. And going to Cambodia and looking at these incredible structures all over the area, because this is near Siem Reap in the northwest of the country, was pretty amazing. You can see the ruins of some of the temples. Riding elephants outside Angkor Thom. And when I was, part of my first Cambodia was the elephants, the exotic, the unusual, the different. And elephants were always associated. This is my second Cambodia. My second Cambodia had to do with the war in Indochina. And here is President Richard Nixon explaining what had been happening in Cambodia, and that was a secret bombing by the United States along the edge, along the South Vietnamese border, and the purpose was to stop North Vietnamese troops from supplying arms and other materials to the Viet Cong in the South, part of what was called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And at that point, I was 10 years old. So I wasn't aware of a lot, although I was a news junkie already at that point. But my second Cambodia was no longer exotic. It was about blood and guts and war and my president and a lot of noise in the streets. How many of you have seen this picture before? It's become one of the iconic pictures of the Vietnam War, of the Indo-Chinese War. And actually that young lady in the middle is from Opelika, Florida, and Kent State, Ohio. One of the protests against the intervention of the United States, direct intervention, public intervention of the US in Cambodia, and the National Guard went on campus and 4 people were killed. Turns out she didn't even know the guy, she was just horrified. But this young lady is from South Florida. And these kinds of things were happening as part of the anti-war demonstrations around the country that had started some time ago. This was in 1970. So I was 10 years old. Tells you how old I am. This is the third Cambodia. The United States leaves Southeast Asia. The domino effect does take place in that the moment the U.S. leaves, these 3 countries, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, fall to communist rule. The North takes the South. The Laotian royals get sort of kicked out, and they allow communist parties in power. And of course, in Cambodia, you have the rise of the Khmer Rouge. That's a postage stamp. I don't think anybody wrote letters back then, but that's a postage stamp with a flag of the Khmer Rouge. How many of you have heard of the Khmer Rouge? Okay, the Khmer Rouge came to power in 1975, and they stayed in power for almost 4 years. And in that time, they killed almost 2 million of their fellow Cambodians. We went to, in Siem Reap, we visited a small monument. I frankly was expecting something bigger. And I'll tell you why I was expecting something bigger and found something smaller. It was like a stupa. A stupa is a Buddhist edifice where a lot of times the remains of monks or important people were interred, cremated. My image of the Khmer Rouge was about that. 1.7 to 2 million people killed by this group that became the rulers of Cambodia. When they first came to power, I believe it was April 1st or April 17th. I confuse the 2 dates all the time. They pushed everybody in the cities out to the countryside. So you had a city like Phnom Penh, the capital, had swollen to 2 million people at that point because refugees were fleeing all the fighting and going to the city, and then they were all forced to leave. Even people who were in hospitals, people who had IVs going down the street being pushed on their hospital beds. How many of you have seen The Killing Fields? It's an amazing movie. I recommend that you see it. You can Netflix it. Because that tells you, through the eyes of one man, the story of what happened when the Khmer Rouge came to power and how they came to power and what it was like to live and die under their rule. So you can imagine how many skulls you can find all over Cambodia. This was at a site that's literally called the Killing Fields, Chung Ek. When we were in Phnom Penh, we visited a prison, Tuol Sleng, and I'm going to show you some pictures. But this is the largest, and I know Skye might agree with me, This is in Chong Ek. You've got basically it's like a cemetery. It's like a park, and it's primarily for foreigners. Those are the people you see, other than the concession stands and people trying to sell you cold coconuts. And I want to talk about that before we go to our conversation. But these are skulls of people who were found at Chong Ek. About 20,000 people were buried there. Almost all of them were from this one particular prison called Tuol Sleng, which is where Khmer Rouge cadres and their families were taken for interrogation, and then they were killed. And when you go to Tuol Sleng, you will see, it's a genocide museum. The Khmer Rouge, not unlike the Nazis, were very meticulous in their record keeping. And they would take pictures of the people who they were going to interrogate and later kill. So you go in there and you see dozens of pictures like this, and sometimes you see their confessions. Now, this picture would strike anyone as horrific and tragic. You've got a Madonna figure, the look on her face, the eyes looking at you, and that baby. And like that, you see pictures of all kinds of people, including teens, men and women, boys and girls. And these people all ended up at Chong Ek, which is outside the city. It's quite a bit outside the city of Phnom Penh. So this Third Cambodia is about this for me. It is something that I'm sort of aware of. I'm in high school. I've been interested in the war. I'm interested in Southeast Asia. My cousin Augie just got back from Vietnam and came back quite a mess. And that's what it meant. But going to this place, it was not, going to this particular museum, it was no longer looking at skulls or watching a movie or a documentary where even though you saw moving images, these people were looking at you in the eye. And you wonder what the photographer was thinking of as the stare, as the look of these babies, of these young boys, looking at them in the face. When we went to in Cambodia, and notice, let me just put a parenthesis. We went to Vietnam and Cambodia, but if you ask any of our students that went on this trip, where did they go, they mentioned Cambodia. I mean, I'll show you some reasons why that might be possible, but it is amazing that what we all became obsessed with, and I still am obsessed with, is Cambodia. I guess some of it has to do with this tragic history and the fact that these people are staring out at me. And that the word genocide has a special meaning to me because of my family background, and that these faces are so real. You know, this is the beginning of my fourth Cambodia. My fourth Cambodia is this trip. I was not planning to go. I'm not an expert. We had an expert who lives in Bangkok who took us all over Vietnam and Cambodia, where we saw a lot of things, tasted a lot of new things, had a wonderful time. And I think of all of us who went, I may be the only one who didn't get tourist tummy. And I was the one eating the street food. So I think we all ate a little street food, right? Some people ate more than others. So this is Cambodia to me now because in addition to, it just built upon what I had seen before. The exotic, bizarre place of my childhood, the war-torn place, the horrific place of genocide, and now I showed up in a Cambodia that has been slowly emerging, and a place where there is less hunger than there used to be, where there is more development than there used to be, and in a town like Siem Reap, where we spent most of our time being a tourist town, it's a lot more prosperous than other parts of Cambodia. But to me, this represents the future, which is people can eat and there will be future Cambodians. Now, what our group did, we did a service project because the Cambodia program, in that Cambodia program, the students have to do service. And the service project we had was working with students at a teacher's college and helping them practice their English skills, English language skills. And every student who went, whether they were in the Honors College or not, we had one graduate student who went with us, they all had an opportunity to teach, to work, and to be taught by the students that they were working with. And these were students of, I guess, late teens, early 20s. Now, I decided to put this picture up because that's, over here's Lorena Becerra, and Chilov Chineas. We had a very international group from Haiti and Brazil and Vietnam. Pretty cool group, Korea. And this was a celebration, and to me that's an important part of my Fourth Cambodia, because you have young people, they're learning, they're educating themselves. These children, these students are going to go back into their small towns and villages throughout the north of Cambodia to teach English, to help educate other people, because education is key there as it is just about everywhere else. And this was a New Year's Eve party, a thank you, goodbye party that the entire school, that the students put on for the teachers. And they're dancing a very delicate dance. No movement other than walking from the hips down, from the waist down, and from the waist up, these beautiful gestures with the hands. When you go to the temples, in Thailand too, but in Cambodia especially, you have figures called apsaras, which come from Hindu mythology, because I'm not going to talk about religion, it's a mess. It's very interesting though. But these women are striking all these different poses, and each one of them, even at Angkor Wat, looks different. So I think of the dancing as sort of repeating the gestures, the gentle gestures of the apsara, and the boys and the girls, the men and the women dance this way. Boy, girl, boy, boy, girl, girl. There's none of that hang-up that we have here. And the delicate, almost feminine use of the hands, feminine in our context, is used by the boys as well. Here we are in the class. That's Ruth Morat. I was hoping she'd be here. She loves this picture. And whose class is this? Maima's. It's Maima's class. So this is what our students were doing. And they were participating in sort of the, Cambodia was helping create their future, and they were helping create the future of Cambodia with these wonderful young people. And we also had an opportunity to do fun touristic type things, and we went to this wonderful waterfall on a holy mountain called Mount Kulen. And those are 4 of our students. The one on the extreme left is over here, Skye Choi. What?
I didn't work out that time.
You didn't work out that time. I wouldn't worry about it. Now, these 2 young men are on the edge of the river walk in Phnom Penh. And they're wearing T-shirts remembering King Father Norodom Sihanouk. There was a long period of time between his death in Beijing and then his, let me look at time. And then his, we have 1 hour? Or less? Huh? Until 1:30? Okay, good. I'm almost done. And so everywhere you went, there was absolute reverence for the king. And every political party, every leader showed reverence toward the king, because he was, not only was he a unifying force, but he was a force that helped give legitimacy to political actors who were less than, let's see, less than kosher, if you will, because of the past. To me, the thing that I found that, there's one thing that I found that really disturbed me. And I figured out that this is a country with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Not just because of the war, but especially because of the genocide. The museum I talked to you about, the Genocide Museum, very poor condition, almost no government support. Actually, I don't think it has any government support. And it's a place where you will see foreigners who go to learn about the genocide. Cambodians don't seem to talk to each other very much about the genocide. There are places people go, and there are people, especially older people, who will talk about it. But for example, the tuk-tuk drivers, anybody know what a tuk-tuk is? Tuk-tuk. A tuk-tuk is a motorcycle cab, right? You've got a guy riding a motorcycle, he's got a little cart with four people or more in our case. Sometimes we put very large people in the back. you would start talking about family, and before you knew it, you would just scratch the surface, and you'd hear stories such as, oh yes, when I was, this is Mr. Na, I think, when I was 4 months old, our family was forced to leave Phnom Penh, and we were forced to leave and go to the village of my parents' families, except my parents had not even been there themselves, and they didn't know anybody there, but they were forced to live there and try to survive eating whatever the farmers there would give them. Because the Khmer Rouge hated everything urban and exalted the rural in some sort of golden past of the Khmer Empire, because the Khmer Empire was based on rice, you saw the rice, and control of water. The Khmer Rouge wanted to recreate that, so everybody in the field to grow rice. So dealing with the past like this is very difficult. I think Maima, one of the young women, the one you saw with the picture with the students, I think it was her who noticed in Siem Reap how few older people there were. Almost 2 million people were killed in 3.5 years. So a question like that, where are the older people? That's a pretty good question. And I guess you can try to guess. Maybe you can say that all the old people stayed in the villages, or at worst, so many people of that generation were killed. I mean, think about who was killed during that period of time. People with any education, professors, doctors, dentists, engineers, musicians, people who spoke foreign languages. At one point, they were going after people who wore glasses. So it was absolutely brutal, and it was absolutely arbitrary. So it kept you never knew what was going on. So you can understand why not only is there a high rate of mental illness still in Cambodia, but that the country suffers from PTSD. And I don't mean just the people who lived through it, but their children and their children's children, because it's a society that hasn't had an opportunity to deal with what happened. There were trials. Only 5 people were indicted for the crimes that killed almost 2 million people. Only 1 has been convicted. 2 died, 1 of old age, and 1 is in house arrest somewhere in Phnom Penh. So there hasn't even been an opportunity to have a scapegoat. There hasn't been an opportunity to say, to have a truth commission. And there are a lot of young Cambodians who want that to happen. And occasionally, I mean, I spent some time with an artist named Anita Ali. I'm hoping I can find $1,200 to bring her to FIU when she comes to New York from Cambodia. And she talked to me at length about what happened. One of the aspects I did not know is that there was an element of ethnic cleansing going on when the Khmer Rouge came to power. They killed the ethnic Chinese and the ethnic Vietnamese in the cities. They killed Indians and Pakistanis that they could find that didn't escape. And they tried to erase an entire culture called the Cham, who are Muslims. And my friend Anita Ali is Muslim, and I had no idea. So even though this is my 4th Cambodia, I had no idea about the other Cambodias, about all these details, and this is something that this trip helped me understand. Dealing with the past like that is very difficult, and I think as long as Cambodia, well, the story of the king, back to the king before, because I'm going to end with the king. I said that you can understand the history of Cambodia of the 20th century by understanding the king's life. The king was, more than anything, a Cambodian nationalist. And when he was overthrown in 1970, when the Americans were bombing, he was overthrown by a military junta backed by the Americans. He fled to Peking, to Beijing, and then to North Korea. And at one point, as the Khmer Rouge were getting stronger, he created a government, a common government with the Khmer Rouge, and he supported the rise of the Khmer Rouge. And he spoke on behalf of the Khmer Rouge for a while before he was silenced. So he is also part of that denial of history. Everyone reveres him. A lot of the people in the government today were government people under the Khmer Rouge. Nobody wants to talk about it. You wonder whether they ever will, or whether this will just be buried. It'll just be like these skulls. They'll just be skulls without names, without history, without anything. But I'm pretty hopeful because of these guys, who are pretty cool guys, and because of the fact that Cambodian culture is so rich. They're in the process of reconstructing it. So you can imagine if all the writers, all the dancers, all the musicians, all of those people were killed, except a few who were scattered, who were able to hide. Reconstructing Cambodian culture traditional Cambodian culture is going to be very difficult, but they're doing it. And I am now raising funds for a group called Cambodian Living Arts. I'm going to recommend that you watch a movie that you can see on PBS website full called The Flute Player, about a young man who's trying to help that happen. And I'm trying to raise a little bit of money, I'm not asking you for any, to help support that process. And I'm going to end with a cliche photograph, happy picture, happy children, because I think in the end that is Cambodia. That's a Cambodia that all of us, Skye and I and the rest of us, met. They were trying to sell you stuff. They were trying to hustle. There are a lot of good things in Cambodia. There are bad things. There's slavery and sex trafficking and all kinds of horrible things, exploitation. But there's also the hope that this country, starting a new phase, because after Sihanouk, Cambodia now has to figure out who it is. I'm pretty hopeful, and I'm hoping to return. Ruth Morat just arrived. She was there too. I fell in love with the place, and I can't wait to go back, and I can't stop thinking about it. And I hope that one day you guys will get a chance to go there. Thank you. Any questions, discussion? No? That was it? Can I ask somebody to say something? Skye, can you share your impressions really quickly about your Cambodia experience, if you don't mind?
Well, I can tell you I didn't buy anything. For sure.
Your mom did that for you?
My mom did that for me, yeah. If anybody doesn't know, my mom had to go when I was 16. But on the trip, honestly, the whole entire trip, Vietnam and everything, it was just one after the other. Things just like were so much cooler. Honestly, we thought it couldn't get better. We were on a boat. We thought, oh, this is the best. And then we go, somewhere to eat, and we're like, all right, this is bomb. And then we just, and then when we go to Cambodia, when it was teaching, it was the best experience. And also there were times, in Cambodia when we had to go to the prison and killing fields where it was just needed. We just needed to go and be aware about it. And, it wasn't a happy time, but it was just, I think we all, reflected on ourselves and, how we view things. And, it was just a great experience. I'm actually planning to go back in December.
Wow. Ruth, how about you? Ruth also, well, they're all involved in teaching. Ruth probably had the best pictures of anybody.
Yeah, I was the picture girl. I took a lot of pictures. Going to this trip, I didn't know what to expect. It was interesting for me because I could agree with Skye because like each day there was like something new, and then we thought that when it couldn't get better, it actually did. It kept on getting better. Our schedules were busy. Like we were doing like so many things. We visited so many temples. We learned about their culture, the ancient history, on what these different temples meant. Definitely being at the schools helped me give back my time, my service, things that I've learned as far as like English. It helped me to give back to the students. The students, their hearts were like so open and big. They were like very welcoming. Their mannerism was to a utmost respect. Like soon as we came into the room, they just came in and they just, like every time, they're like, hello teacher, hello,
So why,
Yeah.
Well, this is something that you do in Cambodia and Thailand. In many ways, Cambodia and Thailand are more connected to, I guess, the India side, while Vietnam is more influenced by the Chinese side. So you don't do this, but you do this in Cambodia and Cham Rip Sur and all that. So, and apparently you do this with everybody. This is with someone more authority, and then you do this with a monk or some holy person. You do it up there. So, and you can't go wrong. It's a sign of respect. You do that to the maid at the hotel. You do that, with the prime minister of the country. So.
My experience there was life-changing. It helped me to just learn about a different culture, and like they were very, very grateful. Like just with the little time that we were there for 2 weeks, and like the amount of English that they learned, like they were very grateful of it. I was honored, to just be in their presence and to just get to know who they are as a person. Most of them wanted to become teachers, but a couple of them wanted to become like doctors and lawyers and different things of that nature. So I actually had a great time. A friend of mine's, we're actually planning to go there sometime in the near future because of the fact that, you know, it had such a great impact on our lives, and the fact that we've impacted their lives so much that they want to become something more in life. So I really enjoyed the trip, and I encourage you all, if you guys do decide to go in the future, it's well worth it.
I travel a lot, and I've been to some pretty interesting places, but it's only one of two places that had an impact on me. This, you know, such a strong impact, and Cambodia is one of them. The other one is Croatia, where I spent time. But this place is special, but I don't know why. I have no idea why it not only struck me, but all the students as well by it. And, you know, some of them are very well traveled, like Matt Ferensky's, and he's traveled to like 40-something countries. So, anyway, yes?
I was wondering if you saw anything that the current government is doing, like to help, you know, like with in terms of infrastructure, the education system, maybe some.
Well, there is no civil society in Cambodia. Foreign NGOs take the place of that. There's a great dependency on foreigners and foreign organizations and foreign governments. Some of the countries already have fatigue, aid fatigue. The current governor, by Hun Sen, who was part of the Khmer Rouge government, is an authoritarian government. There are parties. There is some contestation politically, but it's an authoritarian country. There are no taxes, so what you have is a place where it's very, a lot like some parts of Latin America, where things are done very much on your own, or family is the extension, or you have people who send money back. There are Cambodians, for example, there's a huge Cambodian community in Chicago. You send money back to your village, and all of a sudden, your family has this really nice house. I don't know if any of you are from Ecuador. I've done a lot of work in Ecuador, and you get that kind of thing, places like Ambato. So you have that kind of thing. But it does not have, one of the things that you see that you can contrast with Vietnam is Vietnam, at least the South, is full of entrepreneurial energy. There are all of these, you know, motorbikes everywhere. There's this, you know, it's just incredible. And you cross into Cambodia and everything is much more relaxed, which means wait. You have to wait at the restaurant a little bit longer. So it's a very different kind of experience. Anybody else? Yes?
When I was reading about the people talking about the king who had died, I got the impression that maybe they're speaking that way because they have to. Because I don't really know much about Cambodia, but the way you're saying it, it seems like they don't want to confront the issues, they can't as a country. So is there any, because it's not like other countries that people have to speak a certain way for fear of jail, or is it?
No, there's a relative freedom of speech, and the king was the king father, because he stopped being the king. His son is the king. Back in 2004, he was revered. He was genuinely loved, and I think when people cried, it was real tears from a place of, I guess you can call it a real place, as opposed to say in North Korea where it's from a fear place. So the king was genuine affection for the king and what he represented. Although, like I said, the king to me also represents the good and the bad, the amnesia, you know, the love of the culture, mixed things. Yes, I saw a hand somewhere. Yes.
I was wondering what the population of Cambodia was at the time of the genocide.
I believe it was over 6 million. I believe it was, which means. Or close, no, between 6 and 8 somewhere. And so it was basically a quarter to a third of the population that was killed. It's pretty amazing in 3.5 years. Others? Yes?
As far as communication goes, was it easy? Was it difficult?
You mean talking to people?
Yeah.
Was it difficult to talk to people?
Nope.
Not really. We were based, maybe this is why we were in love. We were based in one place for 2 weeks in the same hotel room, eating the same crazy stuff, and going up and down Pub Street, and it's a tourist mecca, so everybody speaks. Even the little kids who are trying to sell you stuff, they can at least do business in 8 or 9 languages. Yeah.
I spoke Korean to some of the people because one of the main, especially in Siem Reap, one of the main NGOs and people that ate there is the Koreans. So there was like everywhere I could go, I just saw Korean. I even found Taekwondo martial arts there. You know. went over there and trained a little bit. It was just, you know, I spoke Chinese at the Chinese market because I took Chinese here, so they know everything.
Yeah.
I can say that some of us, like your brother, got swindled by little children. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't think it, Matt. You're here. I believe that's you, the brother. Matt was just being generous, and I actually had more fun with him than with anybody else. He would go anywhere. And incidentally, they all had to write journals as part of their assignments, and Matt's journal was bizarre, really good. Yes.
Saying all of this, I think I would really, really like to go to Cambodia. But I was wondering, for somebody that's going there, I know each country has its own culture, its own traditions. What are some really big do's and don'ts in Cambodia?
Do's and don'ts? What are do's and don'ts?
Don't touch people on the top of the head.
Yeah, that's something.
Especially children. But then a lot of Catholics believe that you shouldn't touch little kids on their, especially babies on the top of their
I
heads.
mean, if you did it by accident, you're a foreigner, it'd be okay. But like, for instance, at the classroom, like sometimes it'd be by accident. Because in the college, it actually wasn't really late teens. Like there was kids my age. Like I saw some 16. In my class, there were like 2 16-year-olds. So it was really young too. So you know, and one 16-year-old was literally like this tall. So you know, if by accident it happened, you know, they didn't really say anything. But like we had to keep it in mind.
Don't ever say anything bad about King Father. Do not criticize the King Father, because that will really get you in trouble. And in some places, in temples, barefoot. Don't walk with your feet, whether it's Thailand or Cambodia, although in Cambodia a lot of them are maybe not active, and that's not this, you know, you don't have to, like, don't show the soles of your feet, for example, in some places. Things like that. And don't throw shoes at anybody. No, that's somewhere else.
Oh, wow. And I know that in countries like India, there are things you can't do, like you have to treat all animals with respect and stuff like that because they consider animals holy. Would it be the same thing in Cambodia? Or?
Well, it's a complicated Buddhist country, and it is because it has an it's got a layer of Hinduism and then a layer of Buddhism on top, and they're sort of in areas that are a little more mixed in other areas. But I can't remember of any others. Can you, Ruth? Do's and don'ts?
I would just say, just be like open-minded and be acceptable to their culture. You know, if you see something that's like bizarre, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, you know, just you gotta be calm and just be like, just don't like if something looks, you know, bizarre to you, don't, you know, say, oh my gosh, that looks like, you know, you just gotta be calm.
It's a great place for the food adventure, and I was one of them. Here, Matt was one of them. Yeah, I tried everything. Anything. Any weird fruit, any guts, whatever. Fried guts. I like just plain guts. Yes?
What was the impetus for the service being teaching them English, considering how many languages they need to speak and are proficient in? What was it that drove that this is what we're going to do in Cambodia is teaching?
Well, it's the language that's most in demand internationally, and Cambodia wants to insert itself into the world community, into the global economy. There are already some good and bad things having to do with globalization going on in Cambodia. Two bad things. One, no gambling allowed in Vietnam. So the moment you cross the border from Vietnam into Cambodia, lots of gambling, and with gambling comes prostitution and all kinds of stuff like that. Another thing, how many of you have heard of crystal meth? Okay, not good, right? Or ecstasy. Okay. There are plants in Cambodia that contain materials. I think ecstasy being one that you can a sap from a tree. It's made into a syrup, sent to Amsterdam and other places, and they make these drugs. So positive things. You're having more prosperity. There's almost no middle class though. It's the extremely rich. A lot of them with TV shows. I've never seen so many bad variety shows on TV in my life. It's worse in Italy. And then the people who are very, very poor. 70% of the population is extremely poor, and they're in the rural areas. Any future is found in the urban areas, and there you still have that range. Anybody else? Yes?
I know the French had a big influence in Indochina. After the Khmer Rouge regime, how much of that influence is still there? Do a lot of locals speak French and architecture and all that? In Phnom Penh?
Well, the French controlled Indochina in the late 19th century until the independence movements in the 40s and 50s. And in Vietnam, you see the presence, especially in architecture and food. You see that less so in Cambodia. I'm trying to remember, are there any interesting buildings? We didn't spend a lot of time in Phnom Penh. I would venture there's a lot more French colonial type architecture there. But in Saigon, which a lot of people who live there call it Saigon, not Ho Chi Minh City, you did see a lot more. And French speaking, I didn't. The kids who sell trinkets probably. And you'd have to, you know, in your 70s and 80s, really to have had to function in French. Yes?
So you're saying you can't insult your King father. However, is there anything else like that they prefer to talk about? I know some cultures like ask about your family or personal life to get to know you better, especially in business transactions. They want to see how you are as a person. How do they approach communication with other people?
Well, I don't think we spend enough time there to really go into much detail about that. I'm sure we probably offended people left and right and didn't know about it because of our lack of familiarity with the culture. I can maybe comment on it by analogy. I come from a culture where asking somebody how much money they make and what they do for a living is offensive. And asking about certain things about a family are considered off limits. So I don't know. In Cambodia, at least our contact in Siem Reap, where for the most part they were with people who deal with foreigners. When you went out into the markets, et cetera, is a very different thing, where nobody spoke English and we took advantage of our 10 Khmer words, although I think we did better after a while. So can't really answer that. Yes?
For a person going to Cambodia with no connections whatsoever, how do you go about it? Do you just stay in a hotel and just hope for the best?
Well, I would hope that anybody who travels somewhere does his or her best to learn as much as possible about where they're going, history, culture, food, customs, some of the language. One of the issues I have with people, well, one of the things I like to do when I go overseas to a country that I don't know the language is I try to learn, you know, enough so that, and people are always so thrilled, oh my God, you know, you speak Bulgarian? No, I don't speak Bulgarian. Or you speak Hindi? No, I don't speak Hindi, but you try. Right? You try, and it's a sign of respect for the country. I would study up on where you're going. I would go. It's good to go with a group of people, although I have students, women, who have gone by themselves to Indonesia and India and China and have had no issues. That's a question that I get a lot as well. Yes, Ali?
Did you or anyone in your group face any form of difficulties or dangers or whatnot?
Uh-oh.
I mean, I'm just out of curiosity.
You can answer that, and I'm going to embarrass Ruth.
Okay, it was one of, okay, the stairs that they have, they kind of like, I can't explain it. So I was, Skye was supposed to wait for me, but he ended up leaving me.
I went up first.
He went up first, and then, I ended up, climbing up the stairs.
You were at a temple, at a temple.
We were at,
Yeah.
we were at,
Very steep.
It was way more than
It's very steep, and the steps are like this. And Ruth was startled by a monkey,
Yeah. 'Cause it-
and she fell down almost, what, 10, 15 feet.
I literally like just went back, and then somebody.
Xavier, who was a big guy, caught
He
her.
ran, like I just screamed, and then he ran and
Yeah, you were very lucky. That was actually that was not the worst thing that happened. Is anybody here from risk management or from the general counsel's office? At the very same temple, 5 minutes after that, one of our students was scratched by a monkey.
She was bitten. She was bitten.
I'm trying to make it seem not as terrible. All right, can you please erase that? Just yes. Anyway, but those are the only dangerous things. Anybody else?
well, there was more dangerous.
Oh well, you.
I mean, sure, late night after the karaoke, there were maybe some gangs probably in Vietnam, especially in Saigon. But you know, they didn't really bother us. But there was certain, for instance, my mom, who's crazy, you know, went motorbiking with some people, and you know, on this tour or whatever. and they said, yeah, don't go to this bar or like this karaoke place or this place because that's where that gang is. So they were, you know, those.
Yeah, Vietnam was a very different experience. But probably the most interesting thing I learned in Vietnam was how to cross the street. In Saigon, there are millions and millions of motorbikes, and we were told to step off the curb, walk slowly, don't look, just look straight ahead.
Frogger expert level.
It's Frogger expert level, and I was told to exude confidence with my walk. So if someone tells you to learn to cross the street, exude confidence, because if you look, they're predicting where you're going based on the speed that you're going and everything around you, and it's Frogger, but it's also a physics problem. So not a very elaborate one, but a scary one when you're crossing the street. So yeah, I think that was probably, thinking back on it, that was probably one of the most dangerous things we did, crossing the street in Saigon. Yeah, forget the monkeys. Anybody else? Yes?
Sorry, I just wanted to know how good of a food experience you guys had. That's like one of the most important things, I think, traveling. What's the most exotic from our perspective?
The most exotic thing that we had? Ruth, what was the most exotic thing you ate?
Well, I wasn't too much on the exotic side. However, we were on a boat, and the night that we were there, they made like a fancy dinner for us, and the whole time, like I was in between the 3 different countries. Like I wanted some stuffed crabs, some really good stuffed crabs, and like every time I would order, it wouldn't come out the way I wanted it to come out. And so on that boat, it so happened that on the menu they had stuffed crabs, and it was just so good, and I was so happy.
So you're happy crabs. That's good. How about you, Skye? What was the?
Well,
anybody else want to?
I ate so many bowls of pho.
Yeah, I think some what pho is.
Like,
and by the way, I have the I pho T-shirt with the little hats.
If anybody doesn't know what pho is, it's made from beef stock, I believe.
Yes, the legitimate one.
It's
authentic one.
Just like traditional Vietnamese. I probably ate that, 2 bowls every meal, and yeah, so.
Yes, and sometimes we eat at places that really like, I don't know what kind of meat that was. But there was one point where I could have sworn it barked just hours before. But pho, it's spelled pho, but pho, I got totally pho'd out after a while too. I just templed but pho'd out. I'm more the adventurer. I ate beetle grubs that were delicious. The fermented pork, which is raw pork that's fermented, which I had never tried before. And there we were in an airport. We were eating, because one of the people who went with is a graduate student from the University of Florida who's Vietnamese American, and she was our guide to a lot of things that I did not know. But probably for me, the thing that, it's not the grubs or the crickets or the fried pig intestine stuffed with ground pork and who knows what else. There was a fruit called durian. Durian is this spiky fruit, and Leanna, I know you love it. And you eat it, it's this big, sometimes bigger. It's sort of creamy inside. It's got like arrows, and it's sort of a creamy consistency. And when we bought some at one of the markets where real people buy their food, because that's a must, it tasted fine. We all tasted a little bit. Then I take the leftovers, and I took it to the hotel room and put it in the little refrigerator. Now, mind you, all over Southeast Asia, there are signs that have a durian fruit and an X marked across it because, well, when I came back, my roommate opened the refrigerator to get a green mango, and the entire hotel room smelled of roadkill in the sun for 10 hours, rotting flesh, garbage. And he said, get that out of here. And my response was, wow, it's ready. So I was locked in outside in the balcony until it was all done. So there I was eating durian on the balcony. And then the hassle was getting it out in the morning because it's banned in hotel rooms and in airports and anywhere else. So early at the crack of dawn, I got up and I went down there, put on my sandals, and went around the corner and dumped it, like some sort of criminal thing. That was the weirdest thing. And Skye's mom just she sent me an email letting me know that they're now selling them at a farmer's market in Broward. So I'll be bringing some to FIU. And that was the most unusual. Any other questions? Because I think there's something left to eat. Maybe no. Oh, okay. Well. All right, well, there's some little bamboo sticks left to eat. If there are no more questions, thank you very much. And Eric, thank you so much for the invitation. And have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.